Hello, I'm Maisy. I'm a reporter for the Headlines and Heroines news team.
I'm here at my school, Urmston Grammar, to interview a special guest, my head teacher, Mrs Riffat Wall, who is retiring this year after an incredible 20 years at the school. I'm excited to sit down with her to reflect on her career in education, her achievements, the legacy she leaves behind, and what she sees as being important to women and girls in the area as part of Trafford's International Women's Day Awards.
Oh, there's the bell. Best not be late. Can you start by introducing yourself?
Hi, my name's Riffat Wall. I'm the head teacher of Urmston Grammar School and I've worked here for nearly 20 years.
You've dedicated 20 years to Urmston Grammar. What originally inspired you to become a teacher?
To be honest, it was two teachers, Mr Barnes and Mrs Stretch, both chemistry teachers. I absolutely loved them. Mr Barnes we used to call him the honey monster, and he was a bit like the honey monster on the Sugar Puffs cereal, but I just was absolutely inspired by them.
What have been some of the most memorable moments in your career?
I think, to be honest, it's just interactions every single day. Sometimes a child will come up to me and tell me something that's happened to them that they're really proud of. It's things like assemblies, when sometimes students will get up and present at an assembly, makes me feel really proud. And just being in the classroom and teaching science a lot of the time have been real highlights.
What achievements are you most proud of during your career as head teacher?
I think some of the most important things are actually individuals. When students have been able to achieve their particular goals, it's made me feel really proud when they get their GCSE results or their A-level results. If we've enabled them to do that, that makes me think we've achieved an awful lot by supporting them.
How do you hope your leadership has shaped this school for the future?
I hope the most important thing is when I leave this school, I leave a mark on it, but in the sense of it can actually operate successfully without me. I know that sounds ridiculous because I hope people still miss me and think, we miss Mrs Wall. However, for me, the most important thing is actually it should continue to flourish in the next phase of its life as well.
Have there been any challenges along the way, and how have you overcome them?
I think being a head teacher is a really big responsibility, and sometimes that can feel incredibly overwhelming. I think you have to remind yourself that whilst it's kind of reflecting on things, sometimes you kind of get so absorbed in what's happening on the day-to-day, you lose sight of the things that you've achieved along the way. And I think sometimes just reminding yourself of that is incredibly important. But actually surrounding yourself with good people who will support you, I think is one way of really kind of tackling the challenges and overcoming them.
How do you feel the role of women in education has changed over the years?
I think the most important thing, there are more women in leadership positions. I think when I first started teaching, what you tended to find that there were a lot of teachers who were women, but when you looked at the senior leadership teams of schools, when you looked at the head teachers, they predominantly tended to be men. And often the only women head teachers you would tend to meet were women who were actually head teachers in all girls schools. And I think that has changed quite significantly. I still don't think we're quite there. I think the proportion of leadership positions that are open to women, and especially women of colour, still tend to be fairly small, but I think it is increasing, and that's something I think that we've got to continue to push forward with.
What advice would you give to young women who are inspired to take on leadership roles during their careers?
For me, whether you're a woman who's aspiring to leadership or whatever role you are aspiring to be, is keep that goal in your mind, look for good people who can help you along the way, and stay true to yourself, because there's no use being successful if you've actually veered away from what you believe in as a person. I think you've still got to be your own authentic self.
Who are the women, either historical figures or people in your own life, who have inspired you the most?
I think probably lots of people along the way. I think the women that I work with in school at the moment, whether they're support staff or teaching staff, so many of them have so much to offer and they are an inspiration every single day. I think ultimately my mum is an inspiration to me. She came to this country in the 1960s. She didn't speak very much English and she's brought up 5 children. She's worked alongside my dad in their own business. So I think that's been a real inspiration. But probably Mrs Stretch, that chemistry teacher, was an absolute inspiration in the world of education. For me, she got the right balance between believing in us, wanting us to do well academically, but actually she showed her true self to us as well. She was a real person and she interacted with us in such a way that there were just lovely positive relationships that she nurtured, and I thought that she was an absolute inspiration. I still wish I could meet her and just say to her, Mrs Stretch, do you realise what an influence you've had on my life?
What more do you think schools can do to empower young women and give them the confidence to achieve their dreams?
You want young girls and students generally to be happy. I think that's the most important thing. But that can't be at the expense of everything else. You want them to do well academically. I think that can be incredibly empowering. And you need to get them to understand that they have a voice, but when they use their voice, somebody is actually prepared to listen and that they can make a difference. And I think if you can kind of combine those things of happiness, academic excellence or academic achievement, and actually being able to say what they want in life, I think that empowers all people, but especially women.
If you had one message for the young women of Urmston Grammar as part of International Women's Day, what would it be?
I think simply be who you are and be proud of it. I think it's incredibly important to have a goal, to want to pursue it, but always be true to yourself at the end, because there's no use in achieving success if at the end of it you're not your authentic self. So I think that is incredibly important.
Looking back on your career, what impact do you hope you've had on the lives of young women that you've taught?
I hope I've inspired them to be who they want to be. I hope they've seen me as a positive role model. I hope they've kind of said, well, if Mrs Wall can do it, I can do it too. So I hope that's the impact that I've had on them.
After 36 years in education, what are your plans for retirement?
Well, I have to say, I'm looking forward to spending more time in the garden. I love to garden. I want to travel more. I already travel quite a lot, but I think I'm just thinking about what can I do next. I'd love to go to Costa Rica, so that's on my list. And I love to read, and I just would like more time to read perhaps fiction, rather than having to think about, actually, this is educational stuff and I'm having to read it because I want to, but also because it's going to make a difference in my job. So it's nice to just read some fiction to unwind.
Big thanks to Mrs Wall. It's clear she's made a lasting impact on Urmston Grammar and the countless students who have walked through these halls.